I'm surprised this hasn't come up yet in the debate about reparations, but there is a federal law on the books that would allow this to happen without direct legislation from Congress. Now, there would still be some kind of election consequences that could play in, but to get this done, you would need actual legislation and appropriation from Congress. What you would need a presidency that would be in favor of it or not stand in the way. You would need a Treasury Secretary who would be executing it, and you would need to act before Congress could get something done. And that's if Congress could get something done, because if they couldn't get the legislation in place to try to stop it or make changes, then it really wouldn't matter. So this law on the books allows for a Treasury Secretary to mint a coin of any denomination of their choosing. Now, ideally, this was meant for commemorative coins, but the law is so open and vague, it could be used for whatever purposes. A lot of people were proposing it for the debt ceiling issues that have been happening over the past few years. This is what my proposal would be, that we, the tribe of ADOS, should put pressure on the Treasury Secretary or a Treasury Secretary and or whoever is the president at that time, that this coin should be minted. And I'm talking about to the tune of up to $30 trillion, if not more. And then we would request that this coin, a physical coin, would be personally delivered by the Treasury Secretary, accompanying it with a hand-picked, trusted security detail, and that the physical delivery of this coin would go from the Treasury Department, where it would be minted, to a secure, private, non-profit organization facility that we would have that would be run by us, and we could set up over this organization, different officers, board members, trustees, just to make sure that everything was on the up and up. Now, I know some people are thinking, $30 trillion coin plus, that sounds ridiculous. It would simply be a regular coin. It wouldn't have to be a coin worth its weight in gold. It wouldn't have to be a coin like you see with, say, comic books or something like that, or something you might see at one of these Believe It or Not museums. It would just be a regular coin, the size of either a whole dollar or a half dollar or even a quarter. It really doesn't matter. It's all about the denomination. That's what it's all about. Now, I know some people will be concerned about trust and security issues, but here's one beautiful thing with this situation. This coin, outside being used in transaction basically with the government, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, would be useless. You wouldn't be able to use this coin, say someone wouldn't be able to steal this coin and then go take it to the bank, or go overseas and use it even at a foreign bank. It would only be able to be used basically in exchange with the government. If you know that in the past, they used to print $1,000 bills, $10,000 bills, $100,000 bills, and even $1 million bill. Now, all of these high value Federal Reserve notes were only for use internally with either the government or only with banks, institutions that are member banks with the Federal Reserve or doing business with the government. These bills, these high value Federal Reserve notes, you couldn't take to a store, you couldn't take it to a commercial bank or community bank. You couldn't take it overseas to a foreign bank or a foreign institution if it wasn't basically in some kind of a dealing with the government, they were useless. Okay, some people may even have some today in private collection, but they're completely pointless. All it is a souvenir or a memento. You can't exchange them for Federal Reserve notes. You can't exchange them for gold or silver. As an individual or a private entity, you couldn't do it. They're absolutely worthless. So the same thing would be true, unless certain laws would be changed, but I don't see that happening. The same thing would be true of this coin. Now, here's the key. How do you take this coin that would be minted for up to $30 trillion, if not more? I feel like this would have to be the way it would have to be. I don't think they would be able to mint the coin. I mean, it could possibly be that way, but I would rather trust that we would take physical delivery of the coin first, once it is basically gifted or granted to us, just simply rewarded to us, and that would be the step one of the reparations, simply taking delivery of the coin. Then once we have a certified delivery and receipt of the coin, then we would just send a correspondence to the Treasury Department that we would like to exchange the equal value of this coin for credited Federal Reserve notes. And this wouldn't necessarily have to be actual physical bills that we would receive in exchange. It would all be basically digitized. It would all be keystrokes. It's simply just an accounting situation. Okay, so they would get the coin back. They would take physical possession of the coin back, and in exchange, we would be credited the Federal Reserve notes of equal value. And that's how it could be done. Now, there would be one key with how this private non-profit organization would have to be set up. This organization couldn't be considered to be a bank or any kind of a financial institution, because one of the problems with that is that if you establish yourself legally as a bank or a financial institution, you would be subject to all of the same banking regulations and federal regulations that go with such institutions. And in this country, since there's no bank, no private bank that has a balance sheet of $30 trillion of assets, and that's deposits, that's everything. There's no bank out there that has that high of a balance sheet. Depending on how many assets you hold in your bank on your balance sheet, with the current banking regulations, you have to keep a certain amount of reserves, and there would be other regulations that would come with that, and that would be problematic, because then when people would simply be credited their allotment of this lump sum reparation package, eventually at a certain level, that institution wouldn't be able to issue out any more value. You would still have to keep that on the books as far as your balance sheet as reserves. So it couldn't be a bank, it couldn't be any of these other financial institutions that would be subject to the regulations. It would just simply have to be a private non-profit organization, and then it could just simply issue out an allotment or a credit, or like a grant or something like that, to individuals, to households, to the head of the household, and everyone would receive their allotment. So only those who would qualify under the criteria for ADOS, the tribe of ADOS, for reparations, you would go to this organization once you've been vetted, once you've been approved, and all the research and background check and the particulars have been done to make sure that people who shouldn't get anything don't. And then you would simply receive your allotment. Now that would be based upon the individual. If it would be simply digital or transferred, or let's say if it were issued out, say like some type of a debit card or something like that, then it would be able to happen almost instantaneously. Now, if certain individuals wanted to receive cash, Federal Reserve notes, fiat currency, that would take longer, you know, because that would have to go through a number of different channels. Once again, since it's not a bank, they wouldn't be able to just simply probably just give you the money, you know. That would probably have to come from the Federal Reserve first, then the money would have to be delivered, then they would simply hand you the money, and that would take time. That wouldn't be something that would just be digital. And that's really the main two ways it would happen. Either you would wait if you wanted the Federal Reserve notes, or if you were just fine with some sort of a digital receipt or digital transfer or digital deposit to a certain account or something like that to an institution that is actually a bank, you know, that would probably be the faster way. I mean, if you would want it, let's say, put in your PayPal account or something like that, or maybe a Skrill account, you know, those types of services that are out there, you know, those options would probably be available, you know. And if there were certain individuals who wanted other things like, say, gold or silver or cryptocurrency, you would probably have to facilitate that on your own. Once you received your funds digitally, or once you were able to take receipt of your cash, then you would have to go through other channels to converting it either into some other currency or to some type of a commodity or something like that. So that's the way it would be done, you know. And essentially, as soon as everyone received their proper allotment of their reparations, there really wouldn't be any more use of this organization. There could be the possibility where there would be some leftover money or value on the balance sheet. Maybe certain people were not able to take receipts of the money, or maybe there was just some left over, or maybe some people who were trying to take receipt were not qualified or couldn't get approved, you know. And then at that point, as a group, as the tribe of ADOS, we could simply come together and meet with the different officers, the board members, the trustee members, and then we could just say, hey, and then say if we created our own, you know, national community bank or national tribal bank, you know, then if there's any leftover funds, depending how much it would be, then we can get that organization to transfer those funds into an actual bank, an actual financial institution that would serve the community. Then at that point, then that secondary, that next organization that you would set up, then it would be subject to all of the regulations. But chances are, once everyone got their allotment of reparations, the balance sheet of this particular institution that would be set up in the secondary would be very small. So then this institution would be considered to be a very small bank or community bank, and the regulations for smaller banks and community banks and certain credit unions is a lot less than the big you know, the big boy banks, you know, especially with recent legislation and changes in regulations that have been done. You know, they've really loosened the regulations on the smaller banks, making it easier for them to do business compared to the, you know, the quote unquote so-called, I mean, I guess you could say they're too big to fail in a way, according to MMT, but, you know, if one goes down, another one could simply just take the place. So, you know, either way, whether if you have the so-called conventional school of wisdom on economics or more of an MMT approach of economics, I mean, either way, the fiscal flows into these institutions or other businesses will be done regardless of which ones exist or which ones may, you know, disappear. So it really wouldn't matter. So that's another option I think we should consider. I mean, making our presence felt here and now, 2020 and beyond. We need to definitely continue to do that to put pressure on all of these officials, presidential candidates who are running, candidates across the board who are running, specifically the CBC. If there's CBC members, like a James Clyburn, for example, who are not really looking like that they're in favor of any type of reparations, whether if it's cash payouts or otherwise, then those individuals need to be primaried. We need to get these CBC Negroes out of office, send them back home, and we need to put forward candidates that represent us, ADOS, okay? If these individuals are supposed to represent our communities, and if a great majority is demanding reparations be paid, then all of these CBC members should be saying it. It should be this situation where we're saying one thing and these elected officials are saying another thing. They're not doing the job that we sent them to do, and they haven't been doing it. So there's about 50 of them right now. We need challengers who are going to run. Someone's going to have to run in these races, in these districts, and we are financially, because it takes money, it doesn't take all the money in the world, but it takes some money. We are going to have to financially vet and support these candidates, whether they're running as Democrats or independents or Republicans or whatever. I would prefer they would run as either independents or as a liberation, ADOS Liberation Party. But regardless of how they would run, we're going to have to vet them, we're going to have to hold them accountable, we're going to have to financially support them, and then we're going to have to show up and vote to get them through in primaries and in general elections. So the ballot box, the conventional way, is one way that this could be done, with elected officials, with the Congress, and getting legislation. You would still need, in this, if it was appropriations and legislation, you would still need a president who would sign it into law, or you would need enough of a supermajority to overturn a presidential veto. But then this Treasury Secretary and minting a coin, striking a coin of reparations for us is another way. So, there's different plans where we can make this happen. There's lawsuits and legal briefs suing the government, like a class action lawsuit against the government, and doing these legal filings, and pulling our resources together to do that here within this country, and also making legal briefs internationally in front of international institutions. There's been a number of international institutions who has already said that the United States government owes us reparations, and that have ruled even in other instances where brothers and sisters across the diaspora have been able to receive reparations. So there's lots of different ways. So we need to get the ball rolling and get it moving on these plans, and we need to be multifaceted, okay? We need to be able to multitask. There's not just simply one plan. There's not just simply one candidate or one party or one mechanism to get this done. There's a number of different ways that this could be done. So that's why I'm trying to encourage. We need to collaborate. We need to have the right information. We need to have the homework and the details done. Everything needs to be professional. Everything needs to be according to all the legal procedure, because if there's one little legal filing or one little piece of paperwork that's out of order, they're going to use that as a justification to throw the whole case out. And then you're going to have to go back and fix that one issue and then do another filing again, and that's going to cost you even more money, like it never happened. So, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment if you want to add something to this on the Treasury plan, and maybe later on I'll do some more research on some legal options domestically as well as internationally, so we can get what's owed to us and what we deserve. So just like MAGA supporters go out there talking about build that wall, our rallying cry should be things like cut that check or mint that coin. Okay, so we're now getting to the first Sabbath of this new year, approximately 5779. So I will say Shabbat Shalom. Until the next time, family, be safe.